Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I am the Inconsequential Runner. We have with us Coach Mark. Coach Mark, hello. Welcome back, mate.
Good to see you, Darcy.
Good to see you too. And for those joining us off camera, we were talking about Nottingham Forest, Coach Mark's team doing well in the Premier League. So yeah, gosh, things are going great for you, Coach Mark. What we're going to talk about today, though, is knees. So, Coach Mark, what I'll do is I'll get you to talk about knees. But just before you do, give me a couple of, I know it's going to be too hard to do this, but give me a couple of yes no answers for these two questions. Firstly, is running bad for your knees?
That's a quick one. No.
No? Okay. And we'll get into that. And because that's a big one. And I hear that a lot. So your answer is no, but we'll get into the nuances of that. And is there something we can do to strengthen our knees?
Oh, definitely. Yes. Yes, there is.
Brilliant.
Yes,
Brilliant.
there is.
Okay. So I think a lot of people are going to be hanging around to listen to why running isn't bad for our knees, but what we can do to strengthen our knees. So let's start with the first thing first, running and our knee health. Coach Mark, tell us a little bit about that.
All right. I'm sure you've had people, sort of well-meaning people who don't run,
Yeah.
who sort of they have a concerned look, don't they? And they say, "Oh, how are your knees?"
Yeah.
I had an auntie I caught up with over. She won't be watching this, I'm sure. So, and I won't mention her name anyway. But she said very concerned. Like she said, "Are you still running? Surely you've given that away now." I said, "Yeah, no, I am." She goes, "Oh, yeah, but what about your knees?"
I do.
People
I
were
hear that
people
all
were
the
asking me
time.
that in my
Yeah.
20s.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Especially
Now,
you
I
said
mean,
non-runners.
there's no evidence at all that it is worse for your knees than doing being sedentary is actually worse for your knees.
Yep.
Running actually strengthens your joints and moves your joints, so you get all the fluid through and everything lubricates it in a sense. Strengthens the muscles that support the knees, supports the and strengthens the bones
Right.
as well. Um, the little caveat there, and that's why the whole thing running's bad for your knees, is if someone has a particular issue where there's an imbalance in some way,
Yep.
then running is a repetitive action. So obviously, any imbalance is going to be magnified, and that's where people can get problems with their knees.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
this is where the second part can you do anything about it? It's more sort of putting the what a horse before the cart or whatever you say, cart before the horse. I don't know, but preempting it effectively. So prehab, doing strength training as well as just running is the key, so that you balance up the muscles around your knees.
So how might we do that? And maybe give us an idea of some of the exercises we can do, and also how often should we do them? And the other thing I'll keep my ear out for is when do we do these knee strengthening exercises in relation to going for a run? So should we do them pre-run, post-run, or in between runs? So the first thing
Yeah.
is, yeah, what are the exercises we should be doing, and how often should we do them, and then when?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the major problem, people, with running and the knees, it's the kneecap, and the kneecap is obviously supported on above and below and either side, and if that's not tracking right, so one particular side is stronger than the other, then it's a bit like a door that's not on the hinge properly. Um, a great way to actually test out, for example, our quad muscles are often a major reason why we have knee problems. And there's four quad muscles, of course.
Yep.
We often have one that's particularly tight. That's the big main quad muscle that comes from the hip
Yep.
all the way down, and that's often too tight in people. So that's another issue. But it's these sort of smaller quad muscles, and particularly um, the medial quad muscle, vastus medialis, it's called, that supports the knee on the inside.
Inside. Okay.
We're typically stronger on the outside of the quads. And now a good way to test if all these little supporting muscles are quite strong is to do a thing called a wall sit I often
Also, yep.
if someone comes to me and says they've got sore knees, I'll often tell them to go and do a wall sit because it'll either rule something out or it'll give us a bit of information. Because effectively, you should be able to do a wall sit and hold it for 3 minutes.
For 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, there's a great story actually by what's it? Roger Robinson's wife, Catherine
Oh, Switzer.
Switzer. Yeah, Catherine Switzer, good one. Yeah,
Are you
so
just
she
testing
she
me?
says a great story. Yeah, yeah. Well, you passed. I failed. She says a great story where she had knee problems and she went to the physio. Say my knees are sore, and he said, I think your quads probably aren't strong enough. And she said, well, that's ridiculous. I run, I've been running for years. My quads are as strong as anyone, stronger than anyone. So he said, okay, no worry. Well, I'll tell you what, instead of me sitting behind my desk and you sitting there, I'll sit against that wall and you sit against that wall and we'll have our consultation that way. So after about 15 seconds, her legs started shaking. After 30 seconds, she couldn't do it anymore.
That was it.
So he got his message across. She got up to doing 3 minutes and actually her knee problems disappeared. So that was enough for her. So that's quite effective, isn't it? She's actually she said she's an A-type personality. So she caught up with her physio a few months later, she said, and she said, so what's the sort of ceiling? How long should I, when I'm happy, I've done enough, long enough? And he said, about 3 minutes. And she said, I'll be doing it for 10 minutes. And he said, right, God, you don't need to do it for 10 minutes.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So would you just recommend then, Coach Mark, that people just start with wall sits and see if they can get to 3 minutes? And if they can't, then that becomes objective A for them, doing wall sits until they get to 3 minutes?
Good place to start. Yeah.
Okay.
If they're well below 3 minutes, it's only going to help. There may be other issues, but that might, like Catherine Switzer, might actually solve it.
And how often should you try to do that during the week? So if I do it Monday morning and I only get to a minute and a half, I'm not going to try again in the afternoon or 2 or 3 times that day. I'm not going to get to 3 minutes in that day. So what would you say is the good breathing space between them? And should I do them before I go for the run during the day or after the run, or does that not really matter?
Initially you'd want to space them out because you're bound to get a bit of DOMS, I would say, the first couple of times you do, if you haven't done them for a while. But there's no reason you couldn't do that every day. Once you're into it, because it's what's called a postural muscles that you work, that they're static, so you're not putting a huge weight through them or anything like that where they need to recover. So there's no reason you can't do that every day, but you shouldn't do it before a run, because you always think the running is the riskiest of the activities you do, because you're leaping from one leg to another. So there's nothing you're going to do that's going to be riskier than that. So you should do that on fresh legs, and then do the other thing later on in the day. You could do it straight afterwards if you're a bit of a masochist, but I'd say, do it. Because it's not the sort of exercise you sweat doing. So you can do it anytime, really. I know a guy he'd just do it in his office and hope someone didn't come in to see him at the time.
Do you know what? If I had a flat wall behind me, I would have taken the laptop over there and we would have done it live while we continued our chat and see if I could knock out 3 minutes. That's the sort of nut bar I am, but I'll be doing it. I'll try it later on today. Thank you so much for that tip about the 3 minute wall sit. And if we don't get to 3 minutes, that's step 1, get to 3 minutes. Thank you for assuring us that running strengthens your knee through the activity. Being sedentary is worse for the knee, but with that important caveat that your knee does have to be in balance. Where you can get into issues is if your knee is out of balance. so your muscles aren't balanced or there's some other issue, then the repetitive action of using your knee and running, that will cause the issue. Not running itself, but some other underlying issue. Is there anything else you want to add in terms of, yeah, you talked a little bit about the kneecap. So yeah,
Yeah.
just maybe as a final thing to wrap this, and thank you so
Yeah.
much for that information. Yeah, the kneecap rubbing, that rings bells because I had that once and I ended up with getting, this is when I was a young pup and I was growing fast and I think my muscles were
Yep.
tight and I got what was called water on the knee. And if I remember
Yes.
correctly, that was the kneecap rubbing on the knee because the muscles were
Mm,
taut. And so, yeah, any tips around that and what
yeah.
we might do around our muscles that
Yep.
complement the conditioning of the muscles?
Yep. You can often get a gauge if you just go into a squat position and you just look, is your kneecap facing forward? And it's quite surprising. A lot of people look at it and it's actually facing often off to, you know, you're facing north, it's facing to northeast.
Yep.
Or 1 o'clock on a on a clock. So that often it's that muscle that muscle. It's called the teardrop muscle because just to the inside of the kneecap, there's a little kind of like a little round, but they should bulge out.
Yep.
Now you can activate that, so it's important that activates, especially when you land, that actually tightens and it needs to be strong enough. So you can do things like a squat, squeezing a ball between your knees as
Yep.
you stand up. You're squeezing the ball. You see what I mean?
Yep.
You need to make sure that when you are in a standing position, your knees aren't knock-kneed, of course. So you want a wide enough ball to do that, and your feet close enough together. So that's a good one to do.
So you squat down, and then as you're
Squat down,
standing up, you're pushing your knees in against the
squeeze.
ball.
Yeah,
Squeeze.
you
Okay.
gotta. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I mean, there's other ones, but that's a particularly effective one to do. Other things, of course, a core training is very important as well, because if your core muscles are weak, then your hips are going to tilt forward, which is going to make you knock kneed when
Yep.
when you land. So that's going to also cause the knee not to
Right.
track right as well. So that comes into play as well. So the way to do it is you would start off doing something like a wall sit. A wall sit's easy to do. It's a safe thing to do if you're injured at the time, because it's not putting the knee through any stress. But once you get into that, then you get into movement type exercises like squats, lunges. Leg press is a good one, just to kind of isolate the whole leg. Those sort of ones are better than things like a leg extension where your foot's just hanging in the air.
Yes.
That can actually put a bit of strain through the knee because there's a shearing force, if you see what I mean, with the roller pushing against your shin. So it's better to have your foot planted and do exercises and the running specific. But you see a physio or physical trainer or whatever, they'll be able to talk you through all that anyway.
Perfect. And yeah, look, let me put a little caveat on that. So anyone watching, we're not giving you medical advice. We're sharing what we know, and Coach Mark is sharing what he knows. But anything that's going to work for you has to be personalized for you. So yeah, see your medical practitioners, see your physio. This is a good starter for 10. Definitely the wall sits, but anything else that you want to customize past that point, you need to see someone so they can build something personal for you. Coach Mark, thank you so much for those insights. For those of you that want to reach out to Coach Mark and have Coach Mark as your coach, then you can drop him a line. Coach Mark's details are in the show notes. So just below the video, drop down, have a look there. And if I remember, I'll put them in the comments. And you know what to do. If there was some good information in this video that's going to serve you well and you want to repay us, just hit like and we'll call that deal done. You are repaid. You don't need to do anything more than that. And if you want to stay in the loop with other videos with Coach Mark, and I know we've got a couple coming up soon on hips and what we can do for hips, like we've just talked about with knees, and also gels and what we might be able to replace gels with for our runs, then hit subscribe and you'll be notified when those videos come through. Coach Mark, thank you so much, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers, coach.
Cheers.